On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 48, and the concurrent resolution, as amended, is agreed to.
Well, there you have it. The Senate passed funding for ICE and Border Patrol last night in a narrow 50 to 48 vote overnight as the shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security enters day 69 this morning. Republican Senators Lisa Murkowski and Rand Paul joined all the Democrats in opposition. The GOP is now warning Democrats could force another government shutdown this fall. They are looking for ways to stop funding battles from being used as political leverage. The House now must pass its own version of the budget resolution before final legislation can move forward. Joining me now is Texas Congressman Chip Roy, a member of the House Budget Committee. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What can you tell us about this?
Well, it happened in the middle of the night, I think around 3:30 in the morning. I was talking to my friend Mike Lee late last night. Looks like the Senate mustered the votes for what is the motion to proceed, right? So they're one step further. They still need to come together to pass the final bill. I guess they'll do that next week. The fact here is that Republicans are all united in wanting to make sure that ICE and Border Patrol are funded after Democrats decided to shut down DHS and reject funding for ICE and Border Patrol, endangering the American people. It's just absolutely mind-boggling that they would do this for political points. Republicans are united in trying to get funding for ICE and Border Patrol. But here's the question that we're still wrestling with. We don't like isolating ICE and Border Patrol. This is not the way to do business, because what this means is we're going to be funding the rest of DHS, the rest of government in the fall and September without ICE and Border Patrol because Democrats are blocking it. I think we need to break the back of that by funding all of DHS. I actually agree with Senator Cruz. We should be taking a broader approach to reconciliation, but obviously the Senate's moved this bill. We'll see if they get it through the Senate. I think they will. And then we're going to have to decide in the House what we do. But bottom line is we'll figure all those mechanics out. One way or the other, we're going to break the back of the Democrats on this. Look, you know, it's the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries. He kind of gave up the game yesterday when he was gloating about Virginia, which is mind-boggling in itself because it's such a disaster what they did in Virginia with redistricting. But he said, quote, "We're at war." I mean, he's actually acknowledging and giving up the game that they're at war with us, with the American people. So the Senate, reacted last night. We're going to find a way to do our job, and I think that's what the American people expect, and that'll pay dividends in November. We just got to figure out how to get it all done over the next few weeks.
Well,
listen, I would go in with Hakeem Jeffries. This should show you some of his on some of his topics that he be speaking on, and show you how determined the Democratic Party with him as leader. He just looked foolish to me. In a lot of ways, in some of the ways that he's going about things, he tries to make it make sense. But as when you said, like what he said, when you were determined to stay in power and you're determined to be at war, and when you're determined to be at war for what the American people want, how do you want to remain in power? And it's sad that we're seeing this in our system right now, to where the Democratic Party is pinning the United States citizen against the immigrant. And this is something that the Democratic Party is sparking up. Because why? Because we told our representatives, our leaders, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, what we want to see out of our government, that we need to stop being subservient towards immigration in this country. And what do I mean being subservient towards immigration in this country? That we hold the taking care of immigrants more higher than we are taking care of the United States citizens. And the Democratic side of this is not getting this because they want to remain in power. They want to drive this whole idea of socialism when we are a country of individualists. Meaning that each and every one of us should have an opportunity towards economic success. That was what the Civil Rights Movement was all about. That's what we as Black Americans and white Americans have been fighting about all this time in this country, that everyone should have the opportunity to a fair shot. And we do not set aside this fair shot by having us be what I think is a disrespectful thing in being dependent on illegal immigration or immigration, so much so that we are not giving the United States citizen a shot to economic mobility in this country. I want to go over here to person that I think should be running for president, Stephen Miller. And because he shoots it straight, just like Donald Trump, you can tell a person who has consideration for the American people more than they have for the immigration in this country, because it's getting to the point to where the Democratic Party, as they keep on doing this stuff, is starting to make the immigrant look bad. And you got to think about the entire spectrum in which immigrants are being able to benefit in this country over the United States citizen. I'm not going to get into that at the moment, but however, Stephen Miller is going to key down on some of these details.
Here to discuss the impeachment trigger-happy Democrat, Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. Stephen, so is the White House shaking in its boots over this potential third impeachment with these people? This is insane.
The Democrats are the party of communists, radical leftists, crazy lunatics, and America haters. Every time they have tried to go after President Trump with their hoaxes, their witch hunts, their lies, their scams, fake news, their persecutions, all they've succeeded in doing is making President Trump more popular, more successful, more beloved by the American people, and humiliating themselves in utter disgrace. As President Trump has said, the Democrats are only good at two things: sticking together and cheating. That's all they're good at. Their policies are terrible, unpopular, and hated. Open borders, record crime, coddling criminals, massive taxes, shutting down American energy, shutting down American oil production, transgender for kids, transgender for everybody, radical indoctrination in our schools, and bowing and surrendering to our enemies at home and abroad. That's the Democrat Party. That's what President Trump is fighting against each and every day, Laura.
Yeah, well, impeachment is easier than actually governing, right? They're not about governing. They want to rule over us, not actually govern the country.
And part of that governing the country means that you listen to the American people, and when they tell you that something is wrong with the way that the government is being handled. This is why we have a system. See, every piece of policy that is in this country, we have a system to where we as American citizens, we contribute to that system, the writings, the policies, all this, that, and the other. And it's determined by a lot of times who we vote for. And this is why the Democratic Party is so unpopular right now. You got to think about the wealth tax that's about to take place in California right now, right? You got to think about how Governor Carl, I wanted to say Bavino, but one of our governors has been able to get, one of our representatives, our Republican representatives in the state of California, has been able to get signatures on a stance on the trajectory in comparison of the Save America Act, but particularly targeted towards voting, to where you have to have some form of voter ID in order for you to be able to vote into our system. And 98, somewhere between, I guess, 90% and 85% of Americans agree with this. And the Democratic Party apparently doesn't want to see that happen, because they continuously shutting down the government. They continuously don't want to see ICE do its job, when what Greg Bavino was doing has been reported to be doing the best job to end up getting these individuals up out of our country so that the American people, like I said, can be a shot. The Democratic Party seems to be the party that doesn't want the American citizen to have a shot in this country, want the economic mobility to be for immigrants, and think they are going to get a win. See, this is why, as we look at Act Blue, as we look at particularly Act Blue in this minute, why we are considering that the Democratic Party have been receiving funding from foreign governments. And I'm thinking that at the same time, are the Democratic Party working with these foreign governments to bring these countries' human capital over, and these people being instructed to vote for the Democratic Party? It's getting that serious. Because why would you be fighting for these people so much when you have a whole population of your own that puts you in power to represent, for you to legislate for them, for you to be a leader for them? We look to you as leaders, and here you are. You're telling us that we don't want to lead you. We would rather lead the immigrant. Then why are you in power in this country? Something has to be done with this Democratic Party. And now we're going to get into the place to where the wealth tax in California is making, which is 38% of California's income tax revenue, all the wealthy people in this state. Now these people are taking flight up out of California because of this wealth tax. It's like shooting yourself in the foot, not caring to do serious governing, not taking on serious leadership, but would rather say, we're after this socialist agenda. We want you guys to group up towards our agenda so that we can remain in power, so we can continue to shoot you guys in the foot. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Stephen, during this presser on the DHS shutdown issue, Minority Leader Schumer seemed to blame you for letting this drag on. Watch.
Republicans seem to have a different priority. $140 billion for ICE and Border Patrol. No reforms, no accountability, no strings attached. Senate Republicans are choosing to follow Trump and Stephen Miller instead of the needs of the American families.
So are you...
Hold on. Instead of the needs of the American family, aren't you the people that's not trying to pay people for the work that they are doing? What part of the American value system is that? To where you don't want to see people who are out here working for the government to go out here and get paid for the work that they do. What about the families that they got to feed?
I'm going to confess on the show tonight, Steve, you're the one who's preventing DHS from getting this funding bill that it needs.
President Trump has presided over the most successful, secure, strong border in the history, not only of this country, but of any country in the entire Western world. In other words, not just in America, but every other country has talked about securing its borders. Italy, France, England, all across the world. Only one man in one country has actually succeeded in securing its sovereign borders, and that man and that leader is President Trump. The Democrat Party committed war crimes against this nation by flooding our country with foreign terrorists. Tren de Aragua, MS-13, the Mexican Mafia, the Sinaloa Cartel, the most violent, ruthless terrorist organizations on planet Earth to maim, rape, and murder our people.
And we as a people have to deal with these people in our communities. We have to deal with these people in our communities. People who don't respect, who are taking us back and who are taking us backwards because they don't have respect for the safety and security that we have provided each other after we have gone through so much, in this country to give it the refuge that other people want to come to this country. Like, we've been through a lot. It doesn't matter what culture, from white America to black America to Italian Americans to Irish Americans, like to the Kings of New York. When you watch that movie, like, we have been through a lot to give other people a safe haven to want to be here. But we have even a deeper problem when these people are able to gain influence into our leadership and participate in our leadership as well and become representatives when they want to fight for people that are come to this country illegally. When we have organizations that are like for the funding of or for immigration services, which is not a problem. When you want to set up protests, there's a freedom of speech. But when you got people like Nick Shirley want to go out here and show the fraud and the abuse that this country is taking on from the illegal immigrant population or from the immigrant population. You want to silence him, which is something that is being called the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Okay, it's okay for you to go out here and protest, but when we protest against you, it's a problem. You see the war, the battle in which, how they calling this a war, in the Civil War and all this stuff, how this stuff is playing out, how the Democratic Party is sparking this stuff up. And Stephen Miller is pretty much telling you the same thing. That they have become a party that is against America. And they were this same party during the Civil War. They were the same party which sparked up the Civil War because they wanted to separate from the Union. They're doing the same things. Like, it has come full circle. I don't know. They should have been out of power a long time ago.
Single day, you read another horror story about a rapist, a murderer, a thug, a monster, a child predator let into this country by the Democrats, attacking our families, attacking our children, preying on the innocent in our high schools, in our colleges, dragging people to their deaths, beating them senseless, hacking them to death with machetes. That's what you're seeing from Democrat policies. President Trump, by contrast, record deportations, record low crime, record border security, record safety for American citizens.
I want to get to what happened today at the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. It has issued a ruling to block the Trump administration's executive order that suspended asylum access at the southern border. The court ruled that immigration laws allow people to apply for asylum at the border and that the president cannot bypass this, can't circumvent that. Your response tonight?
Well, of course, this is another example of radical left lawfare. Look, it's what Democrats do. I mean, this is the country we're living in today. The Democrat Party, the ACLU, the SPLC, the radical left, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, on down, their lawyers, their organizations, their NGOs. What do? They wake up in the morning and say, how do we flood America with illegals from the third world?
And look at this. See, it's always a point to where we have to remind ourselves on what that border crossing was looking at. Look at the thousands upon thousands of people that was coming over each day into the United States to compete with the United States citizens. You know, look at this. This is something that these governments, not only the cartel, as they made billions from this, that these governments have sent over into our country to be a benefit and an influence into our country, while being a benefit to their country. How they're being a benefit to their country? They're being a benefit to their country when they don't circulate these dollars back into the United States.
That's what animates them. That's what excites them. That's what motivates them. It's just another example of that, of Democrats trying to pry open our borders. It will fail. And President Trump, obviously, his Department of Justice will appeal this ruling, and he will continue to use every resource we have, military, diplomatic, law enforcement, national security, that we have to keep the border sealed shut, to keep illegal aliens out of our country.
What happens now?
But again, you're
Steve,
dealing with a Democrat Party that loves nothing more than flooding this country with people who don't belong here. But Laura,
what are you going to do now?
worry.
You had a Biden judge, you had an Obama judge, then you had the Trump appointee was in dissent. So it's a three-judge panel in the Court of Appeals. I guess this has to go, presumably.
It's going to go to the Supreme Court.
It'll go to the court.
The president has plenary authority under Section 212F of the INA to prohibit the entry of any class of aliens that he deems necessary. That's the black and white statute.
Got to fast track
Supreme Court. But in the meantime, I assure you, under President Trump's leadership, every and all tool is being used and will be used to keep that border sealed shut. But look, we are in an existential struggle as a country because we have a movement of people in the Democrat Party who hate borders, hate Americans, hate citizens.
Will you abide by the judge's ruling? Will you, because this is going to be asked by the left, will you abide by the D.C. Circuit's ruling until such a time that the court overturns it?
We have to remember, Laura, the D.C. Circuit upheld an injunction that was equally lawless from the district court injunction. So this doesn't change the current status quo at the border. This is one of the most important cases that exists in the entire country with respect to the president's executive actions. I'm not going to advertise to the cartels. I'm not going to advertise to the smugglers what tools President Trump and Secretary Mullen are deploying, but I can promise you, we are going to keep the border sealed completely, totally, fully shut, and this abomination of a ruling, this abomination of a decision will be appealed. We'll win in front of the Supreme Court. And last point, Laura, you talk about the priorities of the American people, whether it be the economy, whether it be healthcare, whether it be education, whether it be quality of life. What each and every one of those things has in common is that Democrats want to destroy those things with unlimited migration, and President Trump is saving those things by reversing that migration and keeping America safe for the American people.
Stephen, great to see you tonight, as always. Thank you.
So it's exactly what he said. We need to. I like the way he pinning down on how Donald Trump is trying to do exactly what the American people have asked him to do when we voted for him, right? Because we have been telling them that we need to slow down. Excuse me. Let me get this right. We need to slow down on all this illegal immigration. We need to slow down. We need to not only illegal immigration, but immigration in within itself. That we only need to keep people here that's going to be able to train the American workforce to be a part of these corporations that have been flooding immigrants into their workforce and denying the citizen the access to maintain a living in this country, and being able to not how would you say not have any economic mobility because they would rather worry about their bottom lines instead of taking care of the United States citizen. It's like this all started when outsourcing began, to where the American citizens had started to be getting put on the back burner when it comes to maintaining economic mobility in this country. And that primarily started doing around the Vietnam War. So this has been 60 years in the making. And the Democratic Party knows that this has been 60 years in the making. And they feel like they have allowed so much immigration to come into this country, so much so that they have the power from the immigrant population that if they fight for them over the United States citizen, that they are going to win. And don't they look like more of a diplomatic party than a party that represents the United States citizen? They look like a bunch of diplomats. Now, diplomats should not have this much of a sway in our country to where they have so much power to where they can vote to where our system runs, or if it doesn't, if it's shut down or if it's open. That's not what, because when you want to fight for the influence of people from other countries to make them a little bit more comfortable here, then you're a diplomat. You're not a political party in this country. So what are we going to do with the Democratic Party? That is the question. Fill me in if you got some ideas, because I want to know about them. I'm going to try to figure some out. Until then, Tiny Cross-H.U.G on the Trumped Up Live show. Always remember to like, share, subscribe to the channel, hit that hype button. It's a good day to be a soldier.
They said transformation was impossible. Faith, facts, and fire. Tiny Cross-H.U.G style.